Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 200. Yes, we are up to 200. Crazy that I've been doing this for 200 times. And it would be interesting to look at episode 1 to see how my pull list has changed. But let's get started and talk about the comics for this show. So we go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week and everything in between. So I have 22 comics this week, so pretty average week for me. And let's jump into it. So worst pick of the week for me was Supergirl issue 11. So Supergirl, I just haven't been enjoying that much. I'm glad the art's going to change next issue because I haven't liked like the rectangular shaped heads and body shapes that we've been getting. It's just weird, anatomy for me for the characters. And then the story wasn't as interesting. It's Batgirl and Supergirl teaming up. You don't really get a lot of their interaction here. They're kind of separate throughout the issue, and Batgirl's just like, that's my friend. And that's pretty much it. There's an interesting cliffhanger, though, with Cat Grant betraying Supergirl, so we'll see where that goes. But not interesting enough to say it's worth picking up. So I'm going to give this issue 2 stars, and like I said, hopefully with the art change, the book will improve. But let's move on to number 21, which I'm sad to see this so low, but I thought it was just a slower issue, and that's Rose issue 4. So Rose is, a book I've been enjoying because of the main character. But this issue, it's a bit of a slow burn because it's Rose, getting used to her powers and still a lot of setup in this book. So that's why it's a bit lower for me. Artwork's still really gorgeous. Love the artwork for this. But yeah, a bit of a slow burn for this one. So I gave Rose issue 4 2.5 stars. Alright, I believe we're up to number 20, which is, just want to make sure we are up to number 20. And we are, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 30. So this is a Secret Empire tie-in, and it was just kind of lackluster. I hated how much time it took to try to tie it into Secret Empire, and then finally once you get to Otto and Spider-Man, it's interesting, but it's like, I'm done with Otto and Spider-Man. We had the Superior Spider-Man stuff. I'm just kind of tired of it, and still the same thing over and over again with them. So, The Amazing Spider-Man issue 30 gets 2.5 stars. I do think the artwork keeps improving, though. That's definitely a positive, but just not feeling this Secret Empire tie-in. Alright, moving on to number 19, which is Josie and the Pussycats, issue 8. Sad to see this because the last issue was in my top 5, and then it kind of went back down, where it's still, revolving around the manager and the arch nemesis, and anytime they're involved, I always feel like the book goes lower. But what I liked is Josie and the Pussycats interacting with the Archies. That was fun, and the Archies get kidnapped. The artwork's still a bit simplistic. I think there could be more detail there for that. So overall, I'm going to give this issue 2.5 stars. I did like Josie and the Pussycats a little bit more previously, as I wear my Josie and the Pussycats shirt. Alright, moving on to number 18. I was just going to take a sip of water and I forgot to bring it. Anyways, number 18, which is Titans, issue 13. So Titans, also kind of this slower burn book. It's a lot of action in this issue of, we get to see Wally dealing with his heart problems and then having this overall story of who's the mole type question. And by the end, Nightwing's like, Amon is the mole. We got Lilith is the mole. And obviously maybe it's Nightwing because he's the one who's kind of aiming at Lilith about this, but yeah, it just kind of feels like they're trying to do too much in this issue, but at the same time the story wasn't really progressing because they try to fit all these characters into it. So overall I gave this issue 3 stars. It wasn't bad, but still not exactly where I want the title to be. Moving on to number 17, which is a new book. I actually gave that 2.5 stars, not 3. Number 17 is Skin and Earth, issue 1. Which is kind of your generic dystopian world book of this girl who is on kind of the poor area of the town, and then you have the rich area, and we find out the reason why she's able to go to the rich area is because her parents had money and they died and gave it to her. So that's pretty much it. I wish I was more invested in this because it looked cool, like the designs looked really cool, but it still felt like a generic post-apocalyptic world story, especially because you've gotten a lot of YA books like that, you know, young adult novels and movies that are dealing with this. I feel like these stories they're kind of at their tail end at this point. So I gave that 3 stars, and that was number 17. Number 16 is Dark Days, The Casting, issue 1, which has some interesting stuff, but I feel like it's, once again, kind of just an information dump. And that's one thing I haven't been liking about the Dark Days stuff, is like, yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on, and they're building this world that ties into a lot of DC history, but it's so much information dump, and there's a lot of dialogue that's not that entertaining, in my opinion. Like the Hawkman stuff, I was kind of struggling to read through, but I like the Duke thing, where we actually learn a little bit more about him and how he's connected to the metal, and that maybe his name's gonna be Meta, but at least he has meta abilities, so I thought that was interesting, but it's all the way in the end of the book, so, and also the artwork's kind of inconsistent, so I'm gonna give this Dark Days, The Casting, issue 1, 3 stars. Moving on to number 15. Which is X-Men Blue, issue 7, which is also a Secret Empire tie-in, which wasn't necessary to have a Secret Empire tie-in. It was just kind of weird. And I feel like the motivation of, I guess, the Brotherhood during the Secret Empire, like, Firestar was in it. There's a couple of characters that were on that team, which was interesting. Havoc was on that team. There wasn't a lot of motive there. Like, I wanted to know why they were doing this, and you don't really get that information, but, you know, the interactions between them are fun. I mean, I love seeing Firestar here. I don't think we see her character enough, and her fighting Iceman was a cool callback. But the ending was also very interesting, with Emma and Cyclops kind of interacting with each other. But the actual setup of the Secret Empire tie-in wasn't strong, and the motives of the characters wasn't as strong in this issue. So X-Men Blue issue 7 gets 3 stars, and I got the Jean Grey, Jim Lee variant. I got both the Jean Greys this week. Alright, moving on to number 14, which is Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, issue 12. So, this issue was fun. It's a little forgettable, but it's fun, where we get to see Batgirl and Catwoman teaming up, Huntress and Black Canary kind of doing their own thing to try to get the Calculator's children. So, I thought it was a fun issue. I like that they used the storyline that's been going in Batman, saying, oh yeah, you know, Catwoman and Batman have a different type of relationship now, and Barbara kind of utilizing that. And Bruce and Barbara just interacting is always fun, because I don't feel like they interact enough, so that one page was entertaining. But the artwork still, I think, needs a bit of work. The colors are a bit damp, and the arc feels a bit fillerish, but it still was fun enough with the interactions. So Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, issue 12, gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 13, which is Spider-Man 2, issue 1, which I'm kind of torn with, because it wasn't a horrible issue. I like the artwork overall, even if Miles' facial expressions are weird at points. But I am torn on this, because do we need Spider-Man 2 at this point, post-Secret Wars? And this issue kind of proves no. You know, we've seen these two characters interact. The opening with Peter saying, oh, Miles, you don't deserve to be Spider-Man, made the team up feel off throughout the whole issue. There are moments where it's like, oh, cool, they're meeting up with Taskmaster. Oh, cool, the other Miles is there. But it all feels like it's too late. We've seen them teamed up before. They're gonna team up in Generations. Do we need this information anymore? Especially the whole information dump that Peter gives, saying, well, this is why it all makes sense, and that our team up happened, you know, even though you're in the Ultimate Universe and now you're not. Just that, trying to explain why this all makes sense is a reason why we might not need this story. So Spider-Man 2 issue 1, I'll definitely continue to see where it goes, but with this issue still does not justify the miniseries itself. So I'm going to give that 3 stars. Moving on to number 12, which is Darth Vader issue 3, which has just been a fun series kind of proving why Darth Vader is a threat. It's him just trying to steal a Jedi's lightsaber, and that's pretty much the issue, but the action by Comicoli is, you know, point on, beautiful artwork, and it's kind of what you want, you know, it's this action, story about Darth Vader being a villain. That's what you want from a Darth Vader book. So overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. Now, is it the best issue? No, because I feel like the story is kind of plain, but I like the characterization of Darth Vader here. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars, and that was number 12. Moving on to number 11, this book's a bit higher than usual, and that's Detective Comics issue 960. And the reason why it's higher is because of the Zatanna and Batman interaction. I love their interaction. I think Tynion, he really gets Zatanna's voice. And now I just want to see like a Zatanna series, because I loved her personality and why she uses magic and why she's a magician. You know, why she kind of hides in plain sight, and that's not the full story. So I enjoyed their interaction a lot between Batman and Zatanna. The other stuff, though, kind of feels squeezed in. The Azrael stuff kind of relates to Zatanna and Batman, but not really. You know, I guess they're just kind of fighting their inner demons. That's all that's kind of related there. And I feel like the story was, there was something taken away from the story anytime it went to Batwoman and Batwing, just because they had to be there. And I feel like this issue would have been a lot stronger if it was just Zatanna and Batman. I don't like that they're forcing the Bat family. Even though this is a Bat family book, you could have arcs where it's just about Stephanie or just about Batwoman. I think that's, you know, the beauty of Detective Comics. It doesn't always have to be about the team. So I'm going to give this issue 3.5 stars. Definitely some positives here, but still not where I want this series to be. Alright, moving on to number 10, which is Regression, issue 3, which is kind of a build-up issue, and why it's a little lower is because it takes a lot of the issue of just our main character still dealing with seeing things and learning about his past lives, but it really picks up in the end where we get to see Molly and our main character find out, or, you know, Adrian, find out that he killed Molly's co-worker, and so he's like becoming evil, and like how is Molly going to, you know, react to this, seeing her best friend possessed. So really interesting stuff. Artwork is gorgeous for this book. I love the artwork for it. So detailed and creepy. So Regression issue 3 is a little bit of a slower issue, but still a fun issue to read. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars, and that is number 10. Alright, moving on to number 9, which is The Defenders, issue 3. And I love the artwork. This is why it's higher on the list. I think Marquez does such a good job at, you know, the character moments, the action. It's so good. But it's such a slow burn, this book. It's more about learning about Diamondback and Luke Cage's past, which is like, alright, even if you've seen the show, you kind of know their past, so you didn't really need that information, I felt. But then once the Punisher comes in, I feel like the story, you know, progresses a little bit more and gets more interesting. So that was cool. I liked seeing the Punisher, but the ending was really cool with Diamondback fighting Iron Fist and Jessica and kind of destroying Jessica and Iron Fist. So that was cool. So there's cool moments scattered in, but still a very slow burn, this book. So I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 8, and I'm glad to see this book higher than it's been, and that is Action Comics 983. And it was just fun to see the Superman family fighting Superman's biggest villains, and you see them all teaming up, and then Lois and John trying to figuring out their position, and by the end the cliffhanger is them being transported into the Phantom Zone, and we'll see how our team deals with that. So even though I still feel like it's very fan-service-y, this issue, it's still fun, and I like seeing the Super family in general. So Action Comics issue 983 gets 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 7, which is Wonder Woman, issue 26, which I thought was very solid and took a different direction from Greg Rucka's run, and I felt like that was really important. It was a bit more cartoony, which I liked, and it was Wonder Woman just showing, you know, how much heart she has, and her taking a break, going to a wedding with Etta, and then this girl finding a bomb, and that's how it ends. So you want to see where that ends up going. So, you know, it's kind of not generic, but it's just, it's more fun and lighthearted, the issue, and I like the character moments with Diana, you know, her getting a checkup, and then that cliffhanger, was fun. So I'm going to give Wonder Woman issue 26 4 stars, and we'll see where that one goes. Alright, moving on to number 6, which is Kill or Be Killed, issue 10, which is also kind of a slower burn book, but I love our main character's dialogue, and him figuring out his life. He's kind of took a pause on work and school and everybody in his life to figure things out after the death of his drug dealer. And you see the characters that had their own spotlight, the detective, Kira, they're all, you know, figuring stuff out. So the detective, no one trusts her. They're just like, oh yeah, you know, this is a simple case. And she's like, no, I think it's more complicated than this. Why did the killer, why does the serial killer save the drug dealer? There's something there. So she's figuring things out. And I love our main character saying, oh yeah, she's gonna figure it out, but just not yet. And then Kira also seeing something's up with our main character's medicine. So that was interesting. And then there's an interesting cliffhanger that I don't know if it's big enough to really say it's, you know, for the hiatus we're going to have with Kill or Be Killed, but the porn magazine that our main character's father drew has the demon in it. So it's another clue that the demon's probably not real and is kind of just in his head. So all this, you know, he feels like he's being pushed by the demon, but the demon's himself. So I find that really interesting, that we're getting more clues of that. So solid issue, some good character moments throughout, and I'm going to give this 4 stars. Moving on to number 5, which is Jean Grey issue 4, and I got the Jim Lee variant for this one. See, I wasn't expecting to like this one as much as I did, because it was like, oh, you know, it's the same thing. She teams up with somebody, whatever. But Hopeless gives kind of a different vibe with every team up. And this one was a lot of fun, where Jean teams up with a drunk Thor, unworthy Thor, Odin's son. And it was all part of the lesson of Jean having to learn how to strategize. And I thought that was a lot of fun, but it's also really comedic, because throughout the whole entire story, Thor's trying to just tell stories from his past as he's drunk and telling legends. And, you know, those parts are boring, but they're supposed to be. And Jean's like, we're in a middle of a fight. Can you tell me this later? So, love the personality Hopeless gives Jean in this issue. And the artwork's solid. It fits a Jean Grey book, but also a Thor book. It kind of feels like this, Norse storyline with the coloring and kind of the bolder line work here. So I liked it. I thought it was solid, and I liked it a lot more than I expected to, even though I'm still not a huge fan of every issue she has to team up with someone, but at least they're different with every issue. So Jean Grey issue 4 gets 4 stars, and that was number 5, I believe. Moving on to number 4, which is Hulk issue 8, which wasn't as strong as it usually is, but still loving the story, because we get to see us caring about Oliver. Oliver, who's turned into the monster. We learn more about him as Jen tries to learn more about him. And her controlling her anger, I felt like, well, it's a little weaker here. Usually there's a nice dialogue with that, but I love the ending where she just jumps off the building and lets go and saying, you know what? It's nice to feel the anger. You know, it's nice to kind of let go. So I love that scene. And the artwork for that. So I feel like it's still a very strong story, because you're really connecting to all the characters and you're feeling invested in the story. So Hulk issue 8 gets 4 stars for me, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, really glad to seeing this in my top 5 a lot lately, and that is Superwoman issue 12. And what a solid issue, where we get to see Lana's trying to deal with, you know, Steele's, John Henry's nephew who was lost, and everyone feels like it's their fault, and Lana just wants to help, and Steele's like, no, you're not family. And you know, that hurts, because technically they are family, but they're not blood related. So now Lana's really struggling to try to deal with her loss of her powers and still using the suit, and the suit being a little damaged, and everything going on with Steele's family. And then we find out in the end that Lana's always had her powers, but she just didn't really have the courage to use them, and they're finally manifesting again, and she doesn't have to be sick anymore. So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that, and I liked kind of this inner courage storyline. Just a really solid issue. I like the direction of this book, and I really like Lana as a hero. So Superwoman issue 12 gets 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, a surprise issue for me, and that is Edge of Venomverse issue 2. Now, usually I'm not a huge Gwenpool fan, because I'm just not a big fan of just comedy serialized books, But I thought this was hysterical, and because it was a one-shot, it was great. It was, you know, what if Gwenpool got the Venom symbiote, and what if she had a huge crush on Matt Murdock? And there's a lot of fun situations of her poking fun of, like, this is a what-if issue, so I could kill whoever I want, even more, you know? So I had a lot of fun with this one. Artwork was really good, too. It had that cartoony feel you need with a Gwenpool book. Comedy was spot on, which is also something you need with a Gwenpool book. And yeah, it was really interesting to see her with the Venom. So Edge of Venomverse issue 2 gets 4 stars, and that was a surprise issue for me. Moving on to number 1, which is World Reader issue 4. Aftershock gets number 1 again. I've been loving their books lately. So World Reader here, we get to see Sarah embracing her abilities a bit more and saying, all right, let me go all out on this planet and figuring out who are these people? So she gets many voices in her head, but then she finds someone that gives her some more answers about this god. You see the Tower of Babel parallel again, where this god gave them light, and because of that, they fought for the light. And you wonder, like, who is, you know, what's this god's story, and how is it connected to the serial killer that's been killing all these planets? So really interesting stuff. I like the whole biblical references throughout the book. And then by the end, we find out there is life on another planet. Again, where we all thought is gone. So really interesting stuff. I like that this was a good build-up of Sarah's character, but also the mystery of what's going on in this world. So World Reader issue 4 gets 4.5 stars, and that is my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links to my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. Also, update, next week I will not have Comic Uno episode because I'll be at Comic-Con, but the week after I'll be back with my normal comic reviews. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys later. Bye.